All right, hey there, guys. Sam here with you on Monday, November 26th. And we're going to take a look at Bitcoin, do an update here, and we'll get to that in a second. Just before I get too far into that, just thought I would let you all know that we are doing a bit of a Cyber Monday promo here today. All right, many of you took advantage of the Black Friday packages that we were offering, and we appreciate that. We are now at this point, we are sold out of the 6-month and the yearly, but we are still offering the 3-month. So you'd have 30% off on the 3-month. And if that's of interest to you, that's not a bad saving. Save you $180. If that's something that's of interest to you, the link will be underneath this video. If you're a YouTube subscriber and existing members, you've seen everything we're offering internal special to you guys as well. So with all of that said, here let's get into a look at Bitcoin. So first up here. Now, I understand this is hard to see if you're watching this on video, but I wanted to just show you this here, and then we'll take them off here. So this is my main, this is my primary count. This is the chart that I'm using for analysis here. This is Bitcoin to the dollar on GDAX, Coinbase Pro, whatever we're calling it now. So here, I've got the 2-hour up here, and we're working. Or granted, we have a lot more data that we can analyze here, but I'm working from this last pivot here at 10,000. We're rounding here, 10,000, on the assumption here that we're trying to finish an A, a B, and a C. All right, so we have some targets now. We've had these fat targets down here at 3,200, and those are all drawn off of the big. Let's see if I scrunch it here, you can see it. So this is, and I've shown this many times. So the dominant swing here from high to low, tagging the 50. And that target is down here at 3,200. Been there since February when we put in those 50s. So we know algos sold that here. Likely there will be some participation if we're going to get to 3,200, and it does look like that has a reasonable degree of probability that we're going to get that level and potentially now even break it. So let's sort of work through that and see if we can come up with a roadmap as to where we might be going next. So looking here, right, so this is a fairly significant assumption that we're making, is that we are finishing an ABC as to how we end up counting the larger degrees here. Oh, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about that once we actually get a pivot down here. But right now, I'm just working on the assumption that we're finishing an ABC. All right, so know that first. And then we have, so it's kind of interesting here that we have from this pivot up here that we did it, again, I'm rounding here, it's 99 and change. We'll call it 10,000 here. From the proposed A wave into this B. So if I've got a modified shift set of median lines, right? So a pitchfork, whatever you call it. So whatever you prefer to call it. I tend to call them median lines. So I've got the modified shift here on this, right? So note how we're now pushing the lower parallel here, but inside I also have a shift. So if I put it here, you can see it. So this is a shift pitchfork. But what's interesting is how these are lining up to run in such parallel lines. It's actually somewhat unusual. So noting that, I want to pay attention, because should we come back up here and go through a retracement, this area here between those two median lines will be a natural, it'll be a magnet as we've now broken through them. As we return back to them, those are likely areas to look for potentially a reaction or a pivot, which could be significant in terms of trying to finish this with an Elliott count that would make sense and that would allow for all the subdivision that we see here. So knowing that, I think that that's worthwhile to have somewhere. So again, if you had your display set up to do a quad, I would encourage you to have that somewhere, so that whether or not you kept the Elliott count on there, you just had the market geometry, so you didn't lose sight of this. Now, I'm going to take it off here just because I know it makes it hard for us to see this. So let me pull these off here, and then we'll work through the Elliott count best that we can to see if indeed we can finish somewhere down in this range. We were spared of the 3,200, which is somewhat important here for the potential to us to be holding as close to that 3,200 as possible. So there's a few assumptions that have to be made here. Well, of course, the first one, as I've just outlined here, is that we're in the C wave finishing in ABC. So if we allow for that, then the subdivision here is what's making this challenging. So we have to allow for a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So as we're working through this whole triangular formation here, that seems to be what we're getting here. Is this whole triangle has finished. Again, there's been a lot of attempts to get an account that works on this, but right now I think this plays better. So given the extent of this breakout here, so this couldn't be a 2. We couldn't go 1, 2 because we can't have a triangle in the second. So given that this was so nicely technical, so if I just grab this, I've got I wanted to show you this as well. So I've got the wolf on that. So note here, if I go to this pivot here, so from swing high to swing low, note where 100% range expansion is literally right on top of that zone. So all leading to more suggestion that this 3200, well, we'll call it the range from 3000 to 3200, we've got a huge amount of technical confluence down at that level. The range expansion just being one additional one. But what I was initially wanted to show you, if I go back to a measured move template here, from this 50, well, here's first algo target, second, and now we're just pushing up on the third. So we know from, if you watch my videos, you know that's a shorthand way to start to be measuring for the 1618. So if I just use my alternate tool now and just grab to that low and project from this 2, we can see here's our 1618. Now, so this is one more technical component here, as the 1618 sits right on top of our very largest degree algo target from the dominant pulls, that 3200. So we've got that fairly large stacking of confluence. Now, that's good news, bad news. So if we were looking at that thinking, oh, well, that's a likely candidate for the third here, it does not, as we go through the subdivision, appear that we are finished yet. So this would be the 1, 2, 3 high probability zone for our third, right, of the third in white, but we still have the 4 and the 5 to resolve. So it creates the scenario here that we could be going beyond that 3200 and breaking down into the 2s here. It's just the reality of what the probabilities are suggesting. So much as we'd like to see this 3200, now there's still we might have to end with some sort of a double bottom here, that we still can be in this range, but it's going to be difficult for this to finish at 3200 unless we end up with a double bottom, which possible. So given that, let's see if we can come up with a roadmap that would make sense. So you'll know, well, hang on, let's get rid of that. So here, so the challenging part of this is identifying the wave count here correctly, and there's some degree of subjectivity here, some degree of making your best educated guess as to what the subdivision looks like, because it's not without the possibility that you'd have multiple different counts in here. So the way I'm counting it now, because I'm assuming, I'm going to use this tool, from this, that we've gone, this is our 1. Then we go into an A, a B, and a C for an expanded flat. So that's our 2. Now the question is, where are we finishing the 3? So I think we have now finished that third here, and then we're in process of the 4. So if that's 1, 2, and then we go 1, 2 yet again, well, we would go through that same process. So grab, if that's the correctly identified as the 1, and then we grab and project down from the 2, if I get that right on there. Well, here now we've come all the way to the 2618. So again, one more component stacking up down here. Well, this is 30, we'll call it 3400. One more technical confluence zone to suggest that we've got a rather large cluster of confluence down here around 3200. So so we have the larger 1, 2 hitting the 1618, then the next degree lower 1, 2 now coming down to the 2618. Now that's of course an extreme for a third, but we get it almost to the tick. So I like this as a strong candidate here for a third. Now, a couple things are going to need to happen here as we dig into this to confirm that. It's unconfirmed right now. We can put a count on it, but until we get the 4 and the 5, it's still right now the best estimate as to where we are in the count. So with all of that identified here, and we know we have that fat confluence zone down here, let's break into some of the smaller degrees here. So I'm going to go down to an hourly here. So I gotta zoom in on this a little bit. so we can get a better look at it. So I got to distort here just a little bit. So if this is, so the big assumption here is that this is the 2. And then we go yet again, and I'm going to just open this up so you can get some scale perspective on it. So if this is the B, so we get an expanded flat, and we finish here. So this being the 2. Well, we've got, this looks more like a 1, and then we'd have to go A, B, C into that 2. So again, since I have it opened up here, we get a better look at it. If that's the 1 and we're going for the 2, we're anticipating that 2 to get at least to the 50. Prime zone, of course, we know well, is between the 50 and the 618, right where we get the turn. But then coming down here, this is what's making this a little bit tricky. It certainly looks like we've got a clean 5-wave impulsive structure to give us that 1, but then a relatively shallow 2. Right, but I can't just ignore this 1 just because it's inconvenient. So if I allow for that, it's shallow. So from the proposed 2 here to this 1, we get beyond the 38, but we don't make the 50. Again, it's not that we don't see these. We go right to the Vegas wave before we make this turn down. Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. So you've got, because if that 1-2 is correctly identified, then this has to be the, so you got a couple of different scenarios here. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the third. So you're allowing for the subdivision here. So in actual fact, you've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's how many times we've had to go. We've had to allow for this subdivision given what we're seeing here. So this third is so far beyond the norms of the 1 that you're kind of making your best educated guess here, because so on the smaller degree, it's even hard for you to see that here on the hourly. So if I open it up here. So from this 2, you got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here, I'll label it. So you've got 1, 2. Looks like 3, 4, 5 to get a 1 coming off of this 2. And then we get yet again another shallow 2. So if I grab it, I know they're same color and it's a little confusing. I'm trying to fix that. So yet again, we go to the 38. So let me put this, that is really small, I know. So let's go to white and we'll go to our smallest, or minuscule. All right, so we can't just ignore it, right? So there's an impulse coming down. So 1, 2. Right, so I've got to count it as a 1, 2 coming off of that. Well, here, now let's scrunch back up. So here's the weekend scream. It just freaked everybody out. Down we go. All right, so if that's 1, 2, so we'd have to be counting this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the third. All right, I won't put that on there. I'm assuming that we can see here, this is the 3, the 4, and the 5. Then we get an A, B, C into our 4. Right, so far it looks like it's okay. So we can make sense of this. Now we come down here and it looks like we're going to finish here with this 5. Now again, it's a little dicey up here. Again, I'm staying on the hourly. Where's the 1, 2? Well, it looks like if I'm still on that tiniest, it looks like I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. I know that's going to be incredibly hard to see, but so let me just move this down here so we can just keep track of it. I would encourage you to do this, even if you can get down here. Now notice I'm still staying on the 60-minute. I could go lower than that, but I don't want to get, that's about as far as I would encourage you going if you're swing trading. Now, if you're scalping or doing something else, right down to the 15-minute would make sense. But can we finish here? So it looks like I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The extension's in the 5th. So if this is done here, that gives me my completed third. Well, then we get a very clear 3 wave, but it looks to me like that's just the A wave here. Now, I could be wrong. The problem with it as the 4th is just the amount of time and distance. It just, the symmetry would be way off. So I think what's more likely is that we're in the process of putting in an A. There's a deep B, so maybe another flat. We'll have to see what we end up with here and where we go for this as potentially the C wave. We don't know where that's going. Right? The C wave here of this degree here in green. So this would be, if this is complete here at 3, we're putting in the A, B, C of the 4 before we go down. Here's this nice cluster to give us the 5, but note that's the 5 of the third of the larger degree in white. So if I put this all back together again, see if I can do it here with the, all right, so this was, can I do it? I might have to go to the 2 hour. Okay, so putting this back together. does it make sense? So in this degree, we'd be going in the largest degree here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where's the 5? Right? All right. So this is, I hate to say it, but that does look like that's likely to be challenged at the very least, given just the typical progression here. If we're going to finish this with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now look at the symmetry of that, just as I've just drawn it here. Looks rather good, doesn't it? So if we're going to do that, so that means this has been technical here. We've got to get this. So let me draw that up again. So kind of reconstructing the whole map. So from this, if that's the 1, projecting from the 2, well, we're down here. Here's the high probability zone for our third, right? Just using the tools that we have. So we've got this down here as a target for our third. No, we're stacking. So we've got a few things stacking here. So I could put that, we'll put that in red as well. So we've got a confluence down here, all leading to a potential third here of this larger degree. Well, assuming that we're going to finish down here, and that's a big assumption, I understand that, but if we're in the range, we're going to finish down here. I'm going to use 3,200. So where are we looking for the 4? Right at the 38. All right, if we finish at the 38, where's our algo target, which would be a reasonable estimate down here? That's putting us down at 2,200. So what else could we use? Well, we could take the length of the 1. Now, we're purely hypothetical here. We're taking the length of the 1 on the assumption that I do not have this pivot. I don't have it. So this is purely hypothetical. But note what I get here. So very common relationship is for the 5th to find parity with the 1st. So the length of the 1 projected from this hypothetical 4. I don't have the 4. But I'm just trying to look at, would I have a roadmap here that would make sense? So note here, you've got multiple targets stacking up here. So you've got, well, you can see they're on top of each other here. So we've got the 200%, the algo pull, the 100%, and then remember we had the wolf range down here as well, the range expansion. So let me get the wolf on that. So down here here we're getting the clustering, the range expansion, right? So it's just taking the length of this swing, projecting down 100%. We stack here. Here's the negative 150, giving us this secondary stack down here at, we'll call it 2,200 to 1,800. Is that, yeah, 1,900. Right? So we have to recognize that that's all very, very much in play. So if we were going to pivot down here, so we'd be drawing a channel. So this in the back of my mind has been here since February, that 3,200. All right, as it broke, that became more and more of a target that looked like, God, they're going to get there. Now it's looking, I mean, it's just very hard to resolve this without breaking that. Right, which in my most conservative estimates here, that's going to surprise me that we break that. But right now, as we just work through the swing structure that we have, it's hard to see how we resolve this without breaking it, right? Unless we're going to end up with a double bottom, which is certainly possible, right? But we like to focus on the probable, not the possible. Shit, we could be done right now. This could just start rocking. There's nothing that says that we can't do this. But if we look at the probabilities and we're trying to resolve this with an Elliott structure, it's very hard to see how we're going to finish this without one more swing down to, at the very least, challenge this low. So first thing, right, we have a sequence of events. First, we got to test that 3,200. We know we're likely to see a reaction, if nothing else, likely to see a reaction from algos taking profit there, right? They've been short for so long. Those will be buy orders. That will create some sort of a little reaction. As to the size of that reaction, well, of course, that remains to be seen. That said, any sort of reaction here, all it does is set us up. It confirms the pivot down here at this huge level of confluence that we have. So then we're looking for the reaction at the 38. So a move up to that 38 is only setting up the opportunity to be a short seller for the final push down to complete this nice 5-wave structure. Then if you liked it at 3,200, which I am a buyer at 3,200, I'm starting my buying at 3,200, right? And it's not about what I'm doing. I'm just, for what that's worth. So I have a significant amount of Bitcoin that I'd be looking to enter the market here at 3,200. Nothing fancy, just limit orders at 3,200 with some in reserve. Should we be going to 2,200, I will look there as well, and that's where I would be extremely aggressive. But that's me, right? That's just, you don't have to do what I do. I'm just share that with you for what it's worth. So in terms of the analysis, sure, you could make the trade playing from the 3 to the 4, but you're going counter. I mean, there's opportunity there, but that's not. You got to be really comfortable with the short-term trading to do that. So my suggestion would be, if you're comfortable on the short side, that's the wrong one. If you're comfortable on the short side, let's get you your short position here. This is the higher. It's the better looking risk reward, put it that way. If we're going to that target there, and we were going to pivot put that stop on the other side of the 50, well, you got 4 to 1 there. Not bad, on the assumption we're going to go down to this lower target at 2,200. That's the better looking trade. You want to be tighter on the stop, well, you can get yourself 8 to 1. Or then you're kind of randomly using a number here rather than using the market. So trading your wallet, you know what, you got to evaluate what kind of exposure you could absorb there should you get hit. Recognizing that shorting down here at these levels is not without a degree of danger, because if this starts to roll, if we start to get some traction here for whatever reason, you can just imagine the number of stops that are potentially here as fuel to drive the market. Now, you know, we don't know where they are. We can guesstimate what the larger players will be doing based on the dominant algo plays. But if this starts to roll, there are going to be stops getting hit all the way up. Right? All the short sellers that are trailing with stops, all of that is fuel for the potential rally. Now, do we have enough fuel to get beyond the 38? Of course, that just remains to be seen. But I just caution you here that shorting here is not without a degree of risk, given where we are and the potential for this to start to accelerate to the upside. So, just a word of caution. Right? We just just think twice about it and be sure that you're confident that you've got to stop in, and if you have to check it repeatedly, I don't even care if you have to get up in the middle of the night and check it. That's the one, that's always the conundrum with crypto here, right? If you're in an FX trade, you can go to bed with that stop and not worry about it getting hit. If anything, it's more likely to get hit overnight if there's a little manipulation in the quieter hours. But with crypto, you want to check that. You want to make sure that gets filled, right? So that's the danger always with shorting crypto, right? So potentially now, if this were start to go. So just a word of caution, nothing more than that. I'm not saying don't take that trade. That's a perfectly valid technical trade. Just approach with caution when you're selling down here at these levels. All right, so with all of that, I think we've got a decent roadmap here. This, very tradable here. So these are the zones that I'm looking at. I'll start buying here, and I'll start adding additionally here at this 3,200 level. If we break and we're going lower, I'm buying again down at 2,200. Just what I'm doing, right? Again, don't have to do what I'm doing. So with all that said, just a reminder that Cyber Monday is still going. This will be the last day we do this discounting. So if you're interested, take advantage of that. The link's directly underneath this video. If you have questions or any kind of issue, you can always write to us. We're easy to get to, and we do see what you write to us, and we make every effort to reply promptly. Okay, with that, I'll call it a wrap here, and we'll see you guys later.